I personally feel like it's fair to say that every few years a movie comes out that people already make their minds up about before it even releases. And in 2023, that movie was The Exorcist Believer. But I'm here to ask, is it really that bad? Hey, what's up everybody? Nick here, and today I want to talk to you guys about The Exorcist Believer. Now, if you remember 2 years ago leading up to this movie's release, I was kind of scared. I was pessimistic because The Exorcist is not a franchise that's been known to turn out good sequels. Like, it's just not a thing this series does. You have Exorcist 3, and then you have everything else in this series. So when you hear that a new movie's coming and it's a sequel to the original movie, you're like, ugh, I don't know about this. Now, there were other warning signs for me going into it too, because it was a Blumhouse property. David Gordon Green was directing it. Danny McBride had a writing credit on it. I was like, oh, I don't know about all of this. But I went and saw it in the theater on opening night, and I actually kind of dug it. I thought it was all right. I thought it was decent, and I thought it was in the top half of the Exorcist property, that's for sure. And then Christian thought the same thing, and I said, hey, I'm not crazy. Like, maybe the public will be like, you know what, this movie was fine. But unfortunately, no. The public was not that way whatsoever. A lot of people hated this movie. This movie was trashed. People made memes about it. They made videos ranting about it. It was the whipping boy for a few weeks there when it came out. And it kind of bothered me, but it made sense as to why. See, the first reason that people decided they hated this movie even before this movie came out is because, like I said, David Gordon Green directed it. This was right after Halloween Ends came out. And whether you loved or hated Halloween Ends, you have to admit that that movie was very, very, very divisive. And a lot of people were not looking forward to see what David Gordon Green was going to do next. People had already made their minds up going into this movie that it was probably going to be terrible, because they likely didn't like Halloween Ends or Halloween Kills. One of those two movies is the one that soured them on David Gordon Green. Another issue going into it was, like I said, again, the Danny McBride writing credit. And that was one of the things that I was weary about going into this, because I felt like with a slasher movie like Halloween, Danny McBride made a little bit more sense. Maybe he can inject some comedy, but with The Exorcist, I was like, he's going to be writing dialogue for like Pazuzu, essentially. Like, I don't know if McBride can do that. But a lot of people were skeptical of that as well. Then it was Blumhouse. Blumhouse. Oh man, you either love them or you hate them. But in reality, they've turned out more good movies than bad movies. So I don't understand why there's this just negative repulsion every time you hear, oh my God, Blumhouse. But those were the reasons going into this movie that people were not ready for it. They were not willing to accept it. And then the largest one of all, The Exorcist. It's a legacy sequel to a movie that nobody ever felt needed a sequel. So the question I asked at the beginning is the movie that bad? And I say no, it's actually not that bad. And there's plenty of reasons as to why I hold that belief. But before I get into that, I want to be fair here, and I want to meet people halfway. And I want to admit to some things that are not good about this movie. And the first thing that stands out is how they handle the character of Chris McNeil. Ellen Burstyn coming back was a big deal to me. I really like her character. I am someone that thinks that The Exorcist is the greatest horror movie ever made. So having her back, I didn't feel like it had been played out up to this point, because it hadn't been. Unfortunately, I just didn't like where they took her character. It made no sense for her to come in and try to save the day. Like, right off rip, that's just what she did. She goes into this room and she's like, I'm gonna face down this demon. And I'm like, well, that just makes absolutely no sense. Now, they didn't kill her, which is something I was definitely worried about, because David Gordon Green has shown I don't give a shit about killing legacy characters. And I kind of respect that. But they didn't kill her. But I just didn't like what they did. That's not the role she should have served in. She could have been the wise sage, like the Dr. Loomis in a way. But instead, she tried to be the hero, and I just don't think that was ever going to make sense for her character. Even going back to the original Exorcist film, that's not who she was. Another thing that I don't think is very good about this movie is really just the horror largely, and specifically the demonic possession horror. A lot of it is stuff we've seen before. Oh, they're saying these really offensive things. Oh, they're smiling. Oh, they're licking their lips. Oh, they're spitting. Oh, the voices are distorted. I have seen and heard all of that, as we all have, dozens of times up to this point. It just doesn't work anymore. If you're gonna do possession horror, you gotta have something something new to say, or you have to have a very, very skilled hand at it. And David Gordon Green is not known for his building of suspense, specifically in this subgenre of horror. So I just don't think it was a good marriage. I didn't hate the concept. I didn't hate what they were going for. I just think the execution lacked. Now, one of the largest gripes I have with The Exorcist Believer, and I think a lot of people agree with this, is the Avengers team of religions, essentially. Look, that is stupid. I've seen this movie 4 times now, and I can tell you every time I've seen this movie, even in theaters, the first time I was like, this is dumb. This is really, really dumb. We are going from, oh, I don't believe, like, oh, this is all just mental illness or they're sick or whatever it is, to like, let's get the Avengers together. And they even have this shot in a church where they all come out like one by one. And it's just like, oh, dear God, like we're just going like total superhero movie here. And it makes no sense. It's really, really corny and dumb. Now, I understand what they're going for there, because at the end, you really want to have as many believers as you can have in the room to really fight back the devil here. But my God, is it handled so stupidly. So I grant you guys all of that. If you are a hater of this movie, I grant you that the Avengers team of religious figures is stupid. I grant you that a lot of the possession stuff with the girls just doesn't really work all that well. And I grant you that Ellen Burstyn's character is dumb and unneeded in the way they brought her in this movie. I just don't think it works. But those are really the only gripes I have with this movie. Now, some of those are decently large gripes, which is why I gave this movie 3 stars, which is just a tick above average. And I'm still going to sit there today. But I'm also not going to sit here and pretend like this movie is gutter trash, because it is simply not. I'm not going to be ashamed to say, hey, there's good things about this movie, and I actually think the good narrowly outweighs the bad. Well, what's good about The Exorcist Believer, Nick? All right, well, I'll get into that with you right now. First and foremost, I really, really like the cast in this movie. I really do. Leslie Odom Jr. is fantastic in this movie. As Victor, I love him in this movie. He sells me in the fact that he is not a believer at all. He sells me in the fact that he is in way over his head with forces that he cannot even comprehend, nor does he even want to. I believe the love he has for his daughter. I really like him in this movie. The 2 girls in this movie, Angela and Catherine, played by Lydia Jewett and Olivia O'Neill, I think are really good in this movie too. Now, as much as I don't like some of the prosthetics sometimes when they're possessed, and I don't really like some of the dialogue they're given because it feels very rote, I still think these little girls give good performances. I actually quite liked them. And especially when you get in the more emotional beats in the 3rd act, I think they really, really do sell it well. I also love Ann Dowd in this movie. Ann Dowd is an unsung hero, okay? Ann Dowd shows up in something and I'm like, you know what? I'm in. She is great in this movie. She has so much pain and so much grief, and I love that. She carries that throughout this movie. I really believe her character. She's very, very sincere, and I really like her. Another thing I really like about this movie is the score. See, David Wingo and Aman Abbasi did an original score for this film, but they also did multiple different renditions of Tubular Bells for different moments in this movie. And I think they all work to great effect. There's enough new and enough old to where I really think this is a solid score. Specifically, there is a moment in this movie during the 3rd act with the track Tubular Bells, I Choose You, that is so impactful and emotional, and you just listen to it right now, pull it up, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's good. There's emphasis with every note. I really like it. So I think the score all around is great in this movie. Another thing I like about this movie is just the way it looks. Look, if you hate David Gordon Green, that's totally fine. But we cannot deny that the guy knows how to set up a shot and film a shot. He's pretty good at that. And it shows in this movie as well. There's a lot of really nice establishing shots, a lot of nice atmospheric shots, and although some of the imagery he goes for when it comes to hell and the demonic is kind of over the top and doesn't make sense, some of it's actually effective. There's a couple moments in this movie that are actually genuinely creepy. Now, there's not enough of them because that's something I complained about in the cons section, but there are a few that really stood out. Look, I'll just straight up admit, the first time I saw this movie in theaters, when Victor grabs the rock and the snake comes out, it got me, okay? It's hard to get me with a jump scare. I normally don't jump at them, but it got me. Another moment that really got under my skin is right after Angela comes home, and it's her first night home, and she's talking to her dad, and for a split second, when the camera goes back to Angela's POV, you see this demonic entity behind Victor for like a second or two and then it's gone, I thought that was really effective. And one of the things that David Gordon Green does there that I think is the right decision is not having this music cue, this sting of a jump scare. No, it is very, very just there, and it's creepy, and you gotta like pay attention, and then it's gone, and you're like, what the hell? But there's also a moment in the third act here where Catherine says, I don't want to die, that like really got under my skin. I actually get goosebumps talking about it because the actress, she sells it so well, but it's also with what's going on in that moment, it is definitely impactful. Like, it's something that I'm just like, oh God, like, ugh. So the movie isn't totally lifeless in the scare department. There are a couple scares that are effective. Unfortunately, they're too few and far between, and that is why I largely put a lot of that in the cons, that this movie just did a lot of rote things with demonic possession. There's not enough new here, and the stuff that is new and is exciting is just like blink and you miss it. It's a handful of times, and then it's gone. So that's a real bummer with this movie. Another thing that I really liked about this movie, and it still gets me to this day, is the moment at the end with Chris and Reagan. And, you know, as somebody that loves The Exorcist and will go to war saying that is the greatest horror movie ever made, that moment meant so much to see that for the first time. Like, I was genuinely, like, I was floored by that. It was so perfect. Now, I didn't like what they did with Chris largely in this movie, but at the end, where she is left to have that happen, I felt like was just a really nice moment. And it was really cool to see Linda Blair on screen again with Ellen Burstyn. It's a feat that Ellen Burstyn is still alive. And the fact that the two of them could reunite after 50 years, like, that was just really cool. And maybe it's just my nostalgia and my love for that first movie, why it mattered so much to me, but it really did. But I think one of the best things this movie does is Victor's journey to belief. Now, part of that is in the performance by Leslie Odom Jr. He really does give a good performance and sells you on that journey. But this movie really hammers that home multiple times throughout this movie, that he is not a believer. It is even called out in the third act in one of the biggest moments in the movie where he needs to be a believer. He needs to be there for his daughter, and he doesn't believe. Amidst everything he's seen, he still doesn't believe. I love that. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the twist, the trick that the demon plays on them that I actually found was something, again, that was new and refreshing. That moment really has deep emotional impact and should resonate with a lot of parents and just people in general watching this movie. But I really liked that added flair. I don't know who gets more credit for that, Scott Teems and Danny McBride or David Gordon Green, but I loved that twist. But the battle to belief for Leslie Odom Jr.'s character, Victor, is just great. I think it's handled really well in this movie. So look, at the end of the day, I understand why a lot of people were turned off to the idea of this movie from the beginning. Nobody wanted a legacy sequel to The Exorcist. A lot of people didn't want David Gordon Green to be the one to direct it and Danny McBride to be the one to write it. A lot of people didn't feel like there was any need to bring Ellen Burstyn back at 90 years old at the time. There were a lot of reasons going into this movie why people were already against it before they saw a frame of it. And in their defense, there's a fair amount in this movie that is unlikable. Whether it is the rote demonic possession stuff, whether it is the random weird characterization of Chris McNeil, whether it is dialogue sometimes that just doesn't feel foreboding, it just feels kind of silly. There is stuff in this movie to critique. But at the end of the day, I think The Exorcist Believer is solid. I don't think it's really all that bad. You know, the way people talk about this movie, it's like it ran over their dog or something. I mean, it's fine. At the end of the day, it's largely just fine. Like, look, this is a series, and I will argue never needed to be a series, but this has become a series, and this is a series with probably more lows than highs, and the lowest of the low is The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, which is genuinely one of the worst horror sequels I've ever seen. And in no universe, absolutely no universe, can anybody convince me that The Exorcist Believer is anywhere close to the just dreck and absolute pile of dog shit that The Heretic is. It's just not the case. Look, it's probably largely for the best that this trilogy never got off the ground past this movie. It's probably largely for the best, I would actually say definitely, that Mike Flanagan is rebooting it again and he's going to be the writer and director of the next film, because he can do no wrong, and if anybody can do a modern day Exorcist movie, it is him. But I'm not going to look back on the time of Exorcist Believer and say it was a waste of time and it was a bad movie and it was a failed experiment. I don't think it was. If it's the only time we get to see Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn reunite as Chris and Reagan McNeil, it was worth it to me. If Leslie Odom Jr.'s performance and journey as Victor is one of the only things you can take away from this movie, it was worth it to me. Hearing new renditions of Tubular Bells that happen at very impactful moments in this movie and will stick with you for a while is all you take from this movie, it was worth it to me. Those are just a few of the things about this movie that I actually enjoy. There's a lot to not like, but I think there's a little bit more to like than not like. And I think a lot of people made up their minds about this movie before they even walked in the door to see it. And unfortunately, that's just the sad reality of the movie-going public these days, specifically the ones that are online a lot, whether they are doing reviews themselves or whether they are connoisseurs of other people's reviews. It is just, they will make their mind up, they will have expectations, and they will let that guide them into what they ultimately say about a movie. I try not to do that. The Exorcist Believer was one of those movies where I went in pessimistic and I walked out decently surprised, and I'm happy about that. I don't think this movie is trash. I don't even think you can make the argument it's trash. I think you could say it's forgettable. I think you could say that it was unnecessary. I think you could say that Ellen Burstyn was wasted. Yeah, those are fair. But I think this is a competently made movie with good performances, and it has a decent amount to say, at least with one of the characters. And if that's all you can take from it, I certainly don't think it's as bad as some people say. But I want to hear down below in the comment section what you guys think. Do you think that everybody's right about saying The Exorcist Believer is absolute gutter trash, garbage, dog water? Or are you like me and says, yeah, there's problems with it, but I actually think it's okay, it's fine, it's solid. Whatever it is, I want to hear down below in the comment section, so sound off. Please make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.